I'll be talking about the current trends and research on young adults' interest in religious and philosophical communities. Then I'm going to describe my ongoing research project for the American Ethical Union on that topic. I will share what I've learned about what young adults are looking for in congregations today and what my recommendations are for our ethical societies to become more attractive to young adults. So starting with the background, many of you have probably heard about the Pew Research Center's recent study of the nuns. I see some shaking heads, great. Those are the nuns, N-O-N-E-S. They're the population of Americans that are unaffiliated with any religious tradition. Hugh told me that he spoke to you about the nuns last spring, if some of you were at that platform address. According to the research, 20% of the U.S. population is religiously unaffiliated today. And that is up from 15% 5 years ago. That is a big increase. This is the largest percentage of nuns ever recorded by the Pew Research Center. What's more relevant to my talk this morning is that a full 1/3 of U.S. adults under the age of 30 are religiously unaffiliated. This generation of young adults has a much higher percentage of unaffiliated than previous generations, and that trend is increasing. Young adults today have a different way of thinking about their religious identity than older generations do. That's what I found in my research as well. According to the Pew research, though, relatively few young adults are hostile towards religion, even if they're in that category of nuns. Most religiously unaffiliated young adults are not in favor of being labeled in any particular way, but they prefer to be understood as unique individuals who experiment with different religious and spiritual groups and practices. A PhD candidate I interviewed who researches this population, he said that the bickering over religious language in terms of identity that we tend to do in ethical culture and other places is not a common practice for unaffiliated young adults as it is for people of older generations. Another researcher, Dr. Elizabeth Drescher, she's a faculty member in religious studies at Santa Clara University. She's done extensive research on the nuns. And she's found that the baby boomers use the term spiritual but not religious, and they feel comfortable using religious labels as one way of identifying themselves in the world. However, the younger generations, and I'm generalizing here, but on the whole, younger generations of nuns, they don't identify themselves in these religious terms. It's not like, hello, who are you, what do you do, and what is your religion? That's not the way that young adults today see themselves. So it's a little more fishy and complicated, I guess. So what do we do with this information about the religiously unaffiliated and the mindset of younger generations today in terms of religion and community? In my view, we need to start acting on it, and I mean right away. We have to use this information. The way our national and local membership numbers have been decreasing in ethical culture, not just probably here, but nationally, ethical culture is going to be dead and gone in the next generation. Some ethical societies are in better shape than others, but as a national movement, we're struggling to find our voice and thrive in today's world. All of our ethical societies want to grow, and they all want to attract and retain more members under 40. That's very understandable. Older members want ethical culture to continue after they're gone, and the only way to do that is to recruit younger members. Okay, I get that. But what are some of the other reasons to include young adults into our membership ranks? Multi-generational communities foster multi-generational perspectives and discussions. That can only be helpful to us as we work to share our philosophy of ethics with the rest of this rapidly changing world. I want more young adults to know about ethical culture because I want my peers to have the opportunity to share in the community and values that we have. I want young families to know that they can raise their children in an environment where we are good people because it's in our inherent nature, and where ethics and social justice are the main pillars of our lives. So if we could take this information that I've been pulling together and all the research that's out there, and some of the strategies of currently successful humanist communities and other congregations of other religions, we could apply them directly to ethical societies and maybe start heading in the right direction. And that's what my research is all about. But before I tell you about my research, let me tell you about what the positive things that are going on in the National Front for Ethical Culture, which is called the American Ethical Union, what's happening right now. There are a couple of great things. We have a person in charge of communications on staff, and she promotes us on social media, amongst many other things. So there's an AEU Facebook account and Twitter account, and she's getting the word out that way, and everyone needs to participate. We have 2 young adult leaders in training, one of whom, his name is James Croft. He has just started his leader internship at the St. Louis Society, and he's trying to bring his wisdom from the rest of the humanist movement over there and infuse it into the St. Louis Society, and hopefully all of us and the rest of the movement will benefit from that. We also have a new director of ethical education, a national director. His name is Dale McGowan, and he's highly respected in the education and humanist circles. He's revamping our national ethical education curriculum, which is formerly called Sunday School. I think a lot of us are trying to head towards using ethical education. And he's helping out the local societies such as yourselves who are struggling to revive their children's ethical education programs. So I urge you to reach out to him. And then there's my fellowship work that's been happening. So let me tell you about that now. I'm in the 2nd year of my fellowship project. Last year, my main research questions were, what are young adults looking for in religious and philosophical groups? And what do religious groups that have been successful at attracting and retaining young adults have in common? Luckily, there's a lot of research on that. So to answer those questions, I interviewed young adults and young families from a few of our ethical societies and from other humanist groups out there. I also read about how other religious congregations have been successful at attracting and retaining young adults. And I'm going to be sharing those conclusions with you. This is ongoing, but what I have so far in just a few minutes. So that's what I did last year, was answering these questions. This year, I'm becoming more hands-on about it. I'm continuing my project, but I'm working directly with 2 ethical societies. I'm working with the Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture and the Baltimore Ethical Society. I'm going to be supporting both of those societies to implement the strategies I learned about last year. Some ways that we're going to attempt to attract young adults include using more social media for publicity, co-sponsoring hands-on social justice events with other humanists and like-minded action groups, forming relationships with nearby colleges and chapters of the Secular Student Alliance, which is a national organization, organizing and publicizing social events for younger adults, and doing more publicity to the nearby community for the Sunday platforms that we think would be most likely to appeal to young adults. Some would appeal more than others. Within the ethical societies in Baltimore and Brooklyn, I'll also most likely be leading some workshops at the societies on welcoming visitors, especially young adult visitors, explaining ethical culture to newcomers and new members, and encouraging intergenerational connections. I really hope that we'll be successful in our efforts and that the Baltimore and Brooklyn ethical societies will have a sizable young adult participation when we're in process or finished or after I'm done with them. I plan to gather the main conclusions of my work this year and make recommendations so that all of our ethical societies can try what has worked in Baltimore and Brooklyn. And I urge them all to start on their own as well, but I'm hoping that my research will help. So I'd like to turn now to my research. What have I learned? Again, my main questions that I've been asking are, what are young adults looking for in religious and philosophical communities today? And what do congregations that are successful at attracting and retaining young adults have in common? So for you this morning, I have a 7-point list. The first point, young adults are unsure of who they are and how they want to engage in society, and I'm sure all of you felt similarly when you were my age. They're searching for meaning and community. It's common for young adults to explore different religious and philosophical groups, sometimes regularly attending, or just dropping in from time to time. Sometimes you'll see them and then they're gone, and you'll see them again. This is common. As they're exploring these groups, young adults need to know what a community is about. So my first point is that congregations need to have a clear identity and mission. A community that clearly and simply displays its values and its reason for existence will likely attract more visitors and make it easier for visitors to decide whether this group is for them, whether they're coming back. As an example, the Sunday Assembly is a new humanist congregation that's been spreading internationally, and it's been very popular with young adults. I see a few heads nodding. The tagline for Sunday Assembly is, live better, help often, wonder more. It's very succinct and powerful and really describes how the Sunday Assembly affects its members' lives, or how it means to. Another example I found in my research is one of the oldest continuously operating congregations in the country, the Middle Collegiate Church in New York City. It has the following tagline included right below its logo: welcoming, artistic, inclusive, bold. This tagline is not just there to be catchy and enticing. It really reflects the congregation's distinctive culture. Middle Collegiate Church is welcoming and inclusive of people of all races, ethnicities, and sexual orientations. It's also a very artistic community. It had the word artistic in its tagline. At every service, they include music for all to participate in, and the church puts on several art shows for the public every year. The community really means to express itself through art, and it lives up to that, amongst other things. My second point is that young adults and young families are attracted to programs and content that are relevant to their stages of life and also in the world in which we live in. So questions that young adults today are asking are, how do I navigate this world with such economic inequality and a difficult job market to find a fulfilling job? What does community and human connectedness mean in a world where everyone is so busy all the time and where a lot of people are mainly connecting through social media? I think we find that some young adults are coming to our ethical societies for more personal, one-on-one connection. How do I help make a difference in the world when there are so many problems and so many people in need? I know that that's one that plagues me, and my ethical society can help me gravitate towards certain ways that I can help. A trend that I found in my research about young adults is that those who have a humanist philosophy respond well to positive messages about creating a better world. They want to explore how they can shape themselves into people who will improve our society. I found that the anti-religious messages of typical angry atheist groups, they just talk about railing against religion, is not favorable with young adults. It really is not. That's not the place for young adults today. My third point, young adults and young families want to see their peers represented in their communities. When my family first joined the Ethical Society of Northern Westchester, New York, I was 7. But I found my peers there. There were other kids my age, and I remember that. I remember thinking, oh, there are people my age I can click with. And that's true of young adults and probably any age group. So that's an important thing. There have been many instances of a young adult showing up in an ethical society and being turned off because they don't see anyone in this setting, and they leave and they never come back. Diversity is my fourth point. In more liberal urban areas, younger people in all religions want to be involved in a diverse religious community. This is a reflection of the globalization of our world today and the interconnectivity of many diverse groups through social media. People under 40 see diversity as an essential ingredient for meaningful and thorough discussions in a more vibrant religious community. We could also extend the word diversity to include religion itself. So besides reaching out to different populations, we could be engaging in more interfaith discussions and events. My fifth point, young people also want to engage in interactive communities that let its members participate as much as possible. So that means having events for only young adults. At the AEU Assembly 2 years ago, we tried to have a young adult event, and people aged 50, 60 were signing up, and we liked the enthusiasm, but there's something to be said for having an event that is just for the adults. I found in my research that generally young adults like to do hands-on projects. That's also a very big point, a big trend. The traditional religious model of a sermon or lecture is not as appealing to some young adults, not all, as it is to people of older generations. Instead, social action projects, group discussions, and other interactive events help younger people to learn about those important issues in our community and the world, and at the same time it helps them explore what kind of adults they want to become. A model example of this that I found is this format is in the Humanist community of Ventura County in California. I interviewed a young adult who founded it a few years ago, and when he founded it, his objective was for that group to be interactive and hands-on. He did not want this format. Even if there was a speaker, he wanted it to be as interactive as possible, making it more of a discussion. Well, that group is now thriving. They have people, they started with mostly young adults, and now the membership is out every age, and they have several events every week. On the topic of member participation in events, one study I read found that congregations thriving with young adults allow the young people to spend time in the church or religious space just to hang out. It's just a non-religious, non-spiritual reason, just to do homework or just to hang out, not for any religious purpose. And conversely, they had events where people went outside that religious space to do spiritual and religious type things. So they have discussion groups at a bar or restaurant. So taking the spiritual and the non-spiritual and sort of flipping where those things happen. Right. Another important way to engage young adult members is to offer them leadership roles in the community. That's very important. So presiding at a platform, being on the board, teaching Sunday school, you name it, being on committees, or encouraging them to contribute and express their unique gifts and talents to the community. I'm a musician, and for me, at the age of 8 or 9, whenever I picked up the flute, for me that was sharing my flute playing with my ethical society a few times a year. That was the way I could participate, and that helped me with bringing up my poise and my presence in front of a group. It was very helpful for me. So on the flip side, though, about this point on engagement, I do want to say we need to also respect the fact that some newcomers aren't ready to participate as much as others. When I spoke to the young parents at the Northern Virginia Ethical Society last year, a lot of them chuckled when they introduced themselves, and they said, "I'm not a joiner," but they found themselves in this room of parents. But they're involved in the society. They all join for their children, and they're not joiners, but they did enjoy being at the Ethical Society. So some people are wary of religious or philosophical groups, and we need to support them to ease into that. My sixth point, a congregation that's successful at attracting and retaining younger generations is able to accept young adults as they are. This is incredibly important. Instead of just assuming that young adults will assimilate into the culture and expectations of a congregation, those congregations that are successful incorporate young adults' personalities, points of view, life experiences, and aspirations into their communities. They meet newcomers where they are in terms of religious knowledge and commitment level, and they refrain from placing any judgment. Now, we don't have any expectations about how well people know about ethical culture when they walk through the door. But other religions, if you don't know certain things about our religion, you're not welcome. Well, that's not true. We have to really accept people as they are. I read about churches that allow their members to show up in flip-flops and shorts. That's just fine. Or with their Starbucks cup in hand and sit down and start the service. Or with really anything that makes them comfortable. That's part of accepting people as they are and as they come. Successful congregations, they also offer many points of entry to young adults. So that includes regular services, events during the week, social events, and volunteering opportunities. So to think that someone is going to fully engage with the society because they come Sunday morning might not be the case. They might come on a weeknight to another event, and that's how they come in. Speaking of welcoming young adults as they are, I don't see it here, but I have a handout I wanted you all to have before you leave the room. Do you all have it? Yes? Yes. Oh, wow. I didn't even see it out there. Wonderful. So that's from the Unitarians, but we can translate some of the words into ethical culture about coffee hour and how we talk to young adults. Some really great points, such as, I don't want to hear anymore, "Oh, it's great to meet you, a young person." Being tokens of our age that way. Nobody wants to be a token of anything. So think of another way to introduce yourself to a young person. What are you about? Why are you here? What are you interested in? Just because they're 25 doesn't mean they haven't had a life experience yet to share. Okay. The last point I wanted to make about my research that I've learned, it has to do with technology. The congregations that are successful do not just use technology because it's a sign of relevancy in today's world. If you find yourself saying, "We should use that technology, that's important," that's not the right mindset. Technology in these communities is used as an innovative tool to express identity and carry out mission. It's just an extension of what the congregation already does. It's not an add-on. It's not something special that we feel like to tack on to what we do. A few examples of this kind of technology would be a polished and solid website and web presence, an updated calendar of events on the website. I can't tell you how many ethical societies don't just post who's speaking when. You can't just go to their website and find that out. A podcast or web streaming of sermons, and consistent social media usage. So an example is one church in the South that I read about has an application for smartphones. And that's where the pastors put the sermon, put the Bible excerpt for the week on the phones. And if that's easier or more comfortable for you to find on your phone than in the Bible itself, that's fine. So they're just using technology to do what they already do. Okay, so just to recap my 7 points again. What is attractive to young adults? Clear identity and mission, programs and content that's relevant to younger stages of life, more other young people to relate to in the community, diversity, interactive communities with opportunities for members' participation. That includes different kinds of events and hands-on projects. Congregations that accept young adults as they are. And technology used as an extension of the congregation's normal functioning and as an expression of their identity. So now I want to turn to my direct recommendations of what our ethical societies could do to become more attractive. The first thing is that we need to clarify our identity, first to ourselves, and then turn outward and show it to the world. So what we should be asking ourselves is, what makes us unique? How are we different from every other humanist organization, organized religious congregation, and social action group? Because we are different. It might take some doing and talking and yelling at each other, but we'll figure that out. How are we unique? Once we do figure that out, we need to let our local communities know, and the world know, and invite everyone to join us, to do what it is that we do that's unique. My second recommendation is that we should probably be a little more focused when choosing topics for discussions and events, for platforms, for all the things we do. Several ethical societies participated in the People's Climate March in Manhattan a few weeks ago, my family included, and it was wonderful. We were there there was at least 11 ethical societies present. It was such a wonderful coming together. So as an ethical movement, we really showed up for that issue of climate change. But how about we take on the topics of democracy, the demonstrations in Hong Kong right now, and how well our democratic system is working, or the inequalities between men and women and what feminism looks like today. I'm sure that our ethical societies are addressing these topics in some way, but how do we portray ourselves to the world as the place to go, or a place to go, for the respectful debates on these issues and their ethical implications? Right? How many groups actually respectfully debate these issues? How many groups talk about the ethics behind them or involved in them? He's mine.
Yeah.
At the same time, if we want to attract young adults, we must also have platforms on individual moral development. Remember that theme that I mentioned earlier that young adults are interested in? How do I become a better person in this world? It sounds simple, but it's very profound and meaningful to young adults. The Sunday Assembly, again, for an example, does an excellent job of keeping that question at the forefront of their programs. If we don't address these messages and rarely feature these topics relevant to young adult stages of life, this population is not going to be so interested in attending our platforms. The third thing I recommend is having a focus group of the young adults who frequent the Philadelphia Society. I've been told that there's a handful of them. I see a few today. But ask them what they would like to do to engage their peers. Make sure your young adults are represented on your programming committee, and that relevant programs and platform topics for young adults are happening every single month. Create events that are interactive, hands-on, and incorporate diverse groups of people in the community. If you want to encourage young adult participation, support your already active young adults to take the lead on these events. The fourth thing I recommend is about music. It might be wonderful to have emotionally moving platforms by including music. That was one of Felix Adler's big ideas, was to have music at every platform. Music and platform services should be uplifting, fresh, and preferably live. And it's great that you have live music here. Our ethical societies could ask their teenagers and young adults to provide ideas for music or actually perform the music themselves. Newer music and popular music could be tastefully performed and appreciated by so many of our generations, everyone, if it's programmed appropriately. Audience participation would encourage congregational connection while also emotionally reaching every person individually. And lastly, as we're figuring out what makes our movement unique, that question I asked before, and as we start programming more platforms and events that would speak to younger generations, we need to spread the word to our communities. So I suggest initiating specific strategies to reach out to the young adult population. That could include partnering with action groups that have a large young adult membership, supporting humanist chapters at local colleges or universities, or developing an ethical education or Sunday school program and advertising that to parents in the community. Try things, see what works for the Philadelphia community, and check back in with me next spring when I'm done with this portion of my fellowship and see what I've learned in Brooklyn and Baltimore. So there you have it. Those are my key points on what I've learned in my research so far and my ideas for our ethical movement to make some changes to start attracting more young adults. The time to implement this is now. Don't just come up and talk to me at coffee hour and afterwards and go home thinking, oh, this is a good idea. But I really urge you to turn this talk into action. Your leader, Hugh Morales, is completely on board with everything I'm saying. I've talked to him, and he's ready to go to work. I'm around and I'm available as a sounding board, so reach out to me. And there are others in our ethical culture movement who are great resources who can help as well. We can all help each other. So I want to leave you with one final thought. I encourage you to think of your current and future young adult population here as an invaluable asset. These young people have unique perspectives on the world to share. They have dreams and they have aspirations that need your support. And they have wonderful ideas to launch the society into the future and ethical culture to the forefront of the humanist movement. Thank you.